Hello everyone, today we're going to look through the most perfect attack you'll probably ever see in a game of chess. Now this game was played between the legendary AlphaZero versus Stockfish 8 in 2018, and what you'll see in this game is AlphaZero playing white, Stockfish playing black, and AlphaZero just opening up and sacrificing pawns to open lines against a black king, and playing an absolutely immense attacking game. Basically AlphaZero opens up the G and H file and also has these two raking bishops bearing down on the black king throughout the game. So AlphaZero is white, Stockfish is black, and AlphaZero begins with the Reti, so knight f3, knight f6, c4 from AlphaZero and e6 from Stockfish, knight c3, bishop b4 and queen c2. So queen c2 is often played by AlphaZero just to stop black from doubling the pawns, and white can recapture on c3 if the bishop decides to take there. But Stockfish castles now, a3, bishop takes c3, and now queen takes c3, so avoiding these double pawns. And here Stockfish plays a5 to stop any b4 ideas. But AlphaZero can just play this anyway because the rook on a1 is supported by the queen. And d6 from Stockfish. AlphaZero plays e3, opening lines for the bishop, and Stockfish attacks with knight to e4, the queen drops back, and the knight moves to g5. Here AlphaZero could have taken on g5 with the knight, and after queen takes maybe play bishop b2, maybe e5 will be played from Stockfish to block the bishop, and h4, queen g4, and possibly b5. And this would probably give black a decent game actually. I guess black's plan now would be to play knight to d7 and jump into c5, but white does have the two bishops and it's just a different game. Instead, in this position, AlphaZero now plays b5, avoiding a takes b4 and a takes b4 because AlphaZero doesn't want to swap rooks off. Knight takes f3 was played by Stockfish, g takes f3, and queen f6, so Stockfish now is attacking the rook on a1. Bishop b2 was quite a logical move, and after queen takes f3 maybe play rook g1, and white has a really good attack. But maybe after e5 and rook g3, bishop f5 and d3, white's attack sort of been blunted a bit and black's actually won a pawn. Queen h5, bishop g2 and c6. So white's attack has been thwarted slightly, so maybe this is why AlphaZero didn't go for this line. Instead, played the safe and solid d4 here. And in Matthew Sadler's Game Changer book, he notes actually that the idea behind AlphaZero is to just build up slowly. And AlphaZero doesn't want to act too quickly, it prefers long-term compensation for the pawn. So here, Stockfish now takes this pawn on f3, and this is the first pawn that's been sacrificed by white. So the queen's now attacking this rook on h1. So rook g1 is played by AlphaZero. Stockfish develops with knight d7, and AlphaZero develops their bishop to bishop to e2, attacks the queen. The queen retreats to f6, and now AlphaZero plays bishop to b2. So it's x-raying the queen on f6 and eyeing up this g7 pawn. So for one pawn, AlphaZero has opened up the g file and now has the opportunity to open up this bishop on b2. Queen h4 now from Stockfish, and AlphaZero now plays an incredible move, just rook to g4, offering up this h2 pawn. And interestingly here, Stockfish actually thinks it's winning by minus 0.69. So that's 69% of a whole pawn, whereas actually AlphaZero assessed this position very differently and actually had white as 54% to win this game. Queen takes h2 then from Stockfish, so now Stockfish is 2 pawns up, and AlphaZero now plays rook to g3, avoiding this f5 move which Stockfish plays, and here AlphaZero castles queenside and offers up the pawn on f2. So what happens if Stockfish now takes this pawn? That'll be 3 pawns up. So queen takes f2. AlphaZero can play rook dg1 attacking g7 and rook f7 to defend, but then will come rook 1 to g2, and after queen e1 check, just bishop to d1, leaves this queen on e1 very susceptible to attack, and it's really got no more squares to go to. If queen h1 in this position, white can play rook h2, and if queen e4, queen e2, black can try f4, but AlphaZero can play rook to h3, and after giving up yet another pawn, just play bishop c2, and actually after queen f4, bishop takes h7, black's in a lot of trouble. King f8 and bishop to d3. Look at the bishop on c8 and the rook on a8, they're doing absolutely nothing. The rook on h3 is going to jump into h8, and the queen and rook are ganging up on this e3 pawn, and that will be taken at a later date, and there's no way for black to defend that. So this will be a terrible position for Stockfish. So once the queen's trapped after taking that pawn, f4 is also a try that Stockfish could play, but no doubt AlphaZero will just capture, and after knight to f6, rook g1, queen e4 and queen d2, the idea is very simple, just play bishop c2 and play d5 and open up these lines for the attack. Maybe the 3 pawns up were not worth it, simply because, again, the bishop on c8 and the rook on a8 aren't doing anything, and white has got more than enough compensation for these 3 pawns. So after castles, this pawn on f2 is very much a poison pawn, and for this reason Stockfish plays rook to f7 here. AlphaZero plays bishop to f3, so gaining some nice control over these white squares, and also now it prepares rook to h1 for the rook, and for this reason Stockfish plays queen h4, rook h1 is played, and queen f6 is played by Stockfish. So what's interesting here is that the g file and h file have been opened up, this bishop on b2 is raking down, and this bishop will come into the game very soon on f3. But the thing that AlphaZero wants most is actually to have great king protection. So it'll only start attacking once it knows its king is relatively safe. And for this reason, AlphaZero plays king to b1 here. Stockfish now plays g6, trying to defend their position. And now AlphaZero played a very unusual move. You'd think that white would try and double these 2 rooks, but no, actually AlphaZero wants to maneuver this g rook into the centre, and it plays rook g, g1, with the hope of eventually moving it to c1 to support this c4, c5 push, and I thought this was a very interesting move. Typically in these type of positions, any other player will probably play rook to h3 and try and bear down on these pawns, but maybe AlphaZero knows better. That black structure is actually quite solid, so maybe this is why AlphaZero goes for rook g1 here. Stockfish now plays a4, gaining more space, and now AlphaZero completely protects their king by shoving it in the corner to king a1, and naturally that is a really safe space. Rook g7 was played by Stockfish, and now e4 from AlphaZero, trying to open more lines. f4 was played by Stockfish to try and shut this down, and now c5, where this bishop on b2 suddenly becomes active and x-rays this queen on f6 and the rook on g7. Queen e7 is played by Stockfish, and now rook to c1, AlphaZero finally manoeuvres their rook to a different file to support this c5 pawn. And even though white sacrificed so many pawns, white's actually all over the board here. It's got so many active pieces, and this is what AlphaZero wants, active piece play over material. Knight f6 was played by Stockfish, and now e5 from AlphaZero, and again giving up another pawn. After d takes e5, AlphaZero now plays rook h e1. Just note that d takes e5 will be terrible due to blocking in the bishop on b2, so this is why rook h e1 is played here, so that the bishop on b2 still has a nice diagonal to go to. From here Stockfish played e4, which isn't the most solid move. Knight d5 was another move that black could play. But AlphaZero could play c6, after e4 rook captures, b takes c6 and rook e5. Black could play rook b8, and b takes c6 queen d6, queen takes a4 would actually leave white with a relatively nice game. The bishop on c8 is still locked in, and this c6 pawn is causing a lot of problems. Black is still a pawn up, but Stockfish now has a lot of problems. Another idea which was seen as better than e4 was c6 here, but I think after b takes c6, b takes c6 and bishop captures, bishop b7, white could actually play d5 here. And if captures and rook c8, AlphaZero could play queen captures on a4, and this bishop on b2 is still really strong. White's caught up with some material, and this e5 pawn looks like it's ready to drop at any point. And if it moves, this bishop on b2, it gets opened up nicely. So I don't really see what white could do in this situation. So Stockfish here played e4, and bishop takes e4 from AlphaZero. Just note that AlphaZero isn't scared of giving up the white squared bishop. The knight takes e4, queen takes e4 would have been played, and AlphaZero is still really in control of this position. The bishop on c8 is locked in, this e6 pawn is really weak, and probably d5 would come next. So this is the reason Stockfish didn't capture. Instead, Stockfish played queen to f8. AlphaZero sacrifices another pawn by playing d5, opening up the bishop on b2, and here Stockfish took on d5 and played bishop to d3, completing another pawn sacrifice. So here AlphaZero is down 3 pawns, and if this was a human game you'd think it would be game over. The 3 pawns are too much. But if you have a look at how many lines have been opened up for white's bishops, white does have a tremendous attack, and it could be really hard for black to defend this. In the game, bishop g4 was played by Stockfish, developing their last piece, and now f3 was played by AlphaZero. If the bishop captures on f3, rook f1 can be played, and after bishop e4, rook takes f4, rook f7, rook cf1. Black's actually in a terrible position because this knight is going to fall to the bishops and double rooks, and there's no way to defend it. So this forces Stockfish to retreat the bishop back to d7, and now AlphaZero tries to go in for the kill. They play queen to c3, attacking this knight on f6, threatening to win a piece. Note that Stockfish also has to protect the rook on g7, from queen takes g7 followed by bishop takes g7. So now Stockfish plays knight to h5 to try and protect the rook on g7 at the same time. After rook e5 by AlphaZero, it now predicts an 80% chance that it will win the game. Stockfish plays c6, and AlphaZero puts the rook onto the open e-file. Stockfish plays knight to f6, and AlphaZero now plays a really clever move, just queen to d4, and what this does is attacks the f4 pawn and also prevents black from playing d4 themselves with this d5 pawn and releasing the tension in the position. Rook e8 looks like a great move for black here to play, but after rook takes e8, black takes with the knight on e8, and AlphaZero could actually play b6 here. And you've got to question now, where can black actually move? That's a good move. I was thinking bishop c8, but then we'll just come rook takes e8, queen takes e8, queen takes g7, and this is just a demonstration of how powerful white's position is. So in a position like this, Stockfish would really struggle. So after queen d4, Stockfish actually takes on b5 with the c pawn, and AlphaZero now realises that the weakness is on d5 and reroutes the bishop back to b1, so it can play bishop to a2 and attack this d5 pawn. So amazingly here, black is actually 4 pawns up, but white has the attacking advantage. Bishop c6 is played to support d5, but now rook to e6 is played by AlphaZero, and this f6 knight is devastatingly lost. Black's position is crumbling. Rook f7 was played in the game, knight h5 was a possibility, but then bishop a2, and rook d8 support the pawn, but then just rook e5. And the idea now is that white will play rook to d6 at some point to gang up on this d5 pawn, and there's literally no way to defend it. And black's position looks really busted here. These 2 bishops on a2 and b2 are just raking down the board, and there's just no defence for black. The position's just too open, thanks to AlphaZero sacrificing all the pawns. So instead, rook f7 was played to support the knight on f6, Rook G1 was played by AlphaZero. Queen G7, supporting the knight again. And Queen takes F4 from AlphaZero, winning back a pawn. Rook E8 now, to try and swap rooks off. But AlphaZero is having none of it, she plays Rook D6. And Knight D7, so Stockfish finds some tactics, rooks attacking the Queen and F4. But this does open the bishop on B2 up. So Queen C1 is played, so now White's threat is attacking this Queen. But there's barely any defence, and now Stockfish actually plays Rook F6. Possibly hoping that the bishop on B2 would capture. I think if AlphaZero went for this, it'd actually be better for Black. Remember, Black's actually still 3 pawns up, so this is something that AlphaZero has to watch out for. In the game though, F4 was now played by AlphaZero, threatening to play F5 and sacrifice yet another pawn. But Queen E7 from Stockfish, Rook takes F6, Knight takes F6, and F5. So finally AlphaZero is trying to open its G file. Rooks have been exchanged off, but if we see, this bishop on C6 is basically a glorified pawn, and I'm not really sure how Black can defend this. The best bet for Stockfish now was to play Queen to E3. So Stockfish breaks the attack by trying to swap queens off, but it's too little too late. AlphaZero continues, F takes G6. Stockfish captures on C1, but now AlphaZero can play the intermezzo move, G takes H7 check. After King F7, Rook takes C1. So they've exchanged queens, but AlphaZero has this really powerful pawn on H7, and he's actually only 1 pawn down in this position, with these 2 raking bishops still at large. So Stockfish actually takes on H7, and after bishop takes H7, it's pretty much game over. This is the matter of technique now, which AlphaZero has in abundance. Rook E3 is played, Rook D1, King E8, King A2, Bishop D7 and Bishop D4 attacking the Rook, and we'll see now how AlphaZero just cleans up. Rook H3, Bishop C2, Bishop E6 and Rook E1 attacking the Bishop, King D7, King B2, Rook F3 and Rook E5, Rook G3 from Stockfish and Rook E3 from AlphaZero, Rook G2 and King C3, and Rook G4, Rook F3 and King E8. And here, slowly, AlphaZero gets the king into an ideal position, so defends the bishop on D4. After bishop D7, King A5, White's king is now infiltrating the position. After bishop E5, Rook F3, Rook D3 to protect the A3 pawn. Rook F2, Bishop D1, Bishop C6 and King B6. Stockfish actually resigned or lost the game to adjudication, and AlphaZero reigns victorious. And this all stemmed from White's amazing attack and managed to win some material off Stockfish. So as we'll see, AlphaZero's attack all started out from this G takes F3 pawn where it opened up the G file. After Queen F6, just played D4 solid. And after this move, Knight D7, Bishop E2, slowly we see AlphaZero just sacrifice another pawn and open up all these lines. And this is very Tal-esque in this type of position, just attacking and opening up lines. And perhaps we can all learn something from AlphaZero's play here. It's just nice to see a computer play in such an attacking fashion and not the same grinding moves back and forth with repetitions everywhere. And of course, once we get into this position, this is an ideal attacking position for any chess player. Even though Black's material up, White's got such attacking chances, and obviously prefer White in this position. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope my analysis was up to scratch. It's very tough to analyse 2 technological giants of chess, but I tried my best. If you did enjoy the video, please drop a like and maybe subscribe to the channel, it really helps, and also drop a comment. I do enjoy reading them and I try to reply to every one of them. Anyway, I hope to do more AlphaZero games versus Stockfish in the future, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.